Alexandria Hampton.
And I'm Chris Hamlin with IOBSE. For all of you guys that don't know, that is the International Organization of Black Security Executives. And we are honored to celebrate Women's History Month. So you might ask yourself, what is Women's History Month? Well, Women's History Month is a celebration of women's contributions to history, culture, and society. And this has been observed annually in the month of March in the United States since 1987. Women's History Month is a dedicated month to reflect on the often overlooked contribution of women to the United States history, all the way from Abigail Adams to Susan B. Anthony, Sojourner Truth, and Rosa Parks. The timeline of women's histories and their milestones stretches back to the founding of the United States. Today in the studio, we have Vanessa Matthews, who is the founder and chief resilience officer of IOBSE Advisors. Vanessa also serves on the IOBSE board as the director of professional education. Welcome, Vanessa, to the studio.
Hey, thank you for having me.
You know, as we begin to talk about this topic about women's history, before we get into that, because we got some questions for you and really kind of see how you show up in this space. But before we get there, please tell us a little bit about yourself and about your company.
Yeah, so I am originally from Virginia Beach, Virginia, grew up in Atlanta. I've been in Charlotte for currently going on 9 years. My background's in Homeland Security and emergency management. My career started in aviation and manufacturing. I transitioned over to the private sector. Well, yeah, in retail. And prior to the private sector, I spent some time with the Department of Homeland Security in local government. Today, I lead a company called IOBSE Advisors. IOBSE is Greek for safe, secure, and sure. And our why is really twofold. We're here to help organizations to uncover their blind spots. And secondly, we're here to protect the legacy of leaders. So we serve 3 specific pillars. 1 is physical security, 2 is emergency management, and then 3 is all things resiliency, crisis management, and business continuity.
Wow, nice. That's super impressive. Nice.
That is. So, Vanessa, we want to go ahead and we curated some questions for you. And we want to go ahead and jump into that. So we wanted to know, how do you empower yourself and women around you?
So be mindful of my laughing outbursts. So honestly, it's my faith. I was talking to my mom this past week. So she's my director of administration. So she handles all of our back end, the payroll, the administration. And I asked her about just kind of the women in our family and my grandmothers. And what she told me is that she believed that the reason why I came out the way that I did, right, is because of the shoulders of the women in our family and the support system that they created. So I'm not standing on Vanessa Matthews. I'm standing on my grandmothers, my great grandmothers, my grandfathers, whom I've never even met, my dad, and what they instilled in me. My parents did an excellent job of putting good people around me and creating a family. I'm an only child, so everywhere I go, I create friends and family. But secondly, I'm a naturally driven person. I'm an achievement oriented type of person. I like to set goals. Even on vacation, I'm like, ooh, if I take a nap, that's a goal that I hit and I set. So it's kind of built into my DNA, but I really lean and feel like a lot of that has come from my parents and what they were able to instill.
Wow, that's impressive. You know, when you think about, you're an only child, so at work, in the workplace, in your office, and as you're leading your teams, how do you communicate to other women and make them feel heard or included?
Yeah. So I thought a lot about this question when you sent it over. And to be honest, because of my own personal experiences in the workplace. So when I graduated from Savannah State University, I became the first female in the state of Georgia to graduate with a degree in Homeland Security and Emergency Management. I walked right into aviation and manufacturing, working for a Fortune 200 company, and was the only of the only female, only African-American, only person under the age of 50. And so I have firsthand experience of what it's like to be a Black female in corporate America, what it's like to be a woman, what it's like to be a millennial in corporate America. And I say that to say, because I've had my own experiences and it hasn't always been great, what I try to do is treat people the way that I wanted to be treated in those places. I want you to know that I see you. I want you to know that I hear you. So the way in which we do and how we communicate with everybody on my team, it starts with our values. They're the non-negotiables in our business, and it's how we hold ourselves accountable for who we say that we are and how we operate. I don't really treat anyone differently or do anything differently. Now, at this point in life in our company, we have more women than we have more males on our team. So I'm very cognizant, and we all are, that the majority of us, family comes first. So whether it's your wife, your spouse, your kids, your grandparents, or whoever you might be taking care of, that comes first. And so I communicate late at night or early in the mornings, sometimes last minute, and my team is amazing because they support those requests and they respond quickly. But I also tell them, I don't expect for you to respond or to work late at night. I appreciate it when you do, but it's not an expectation. I'm not going to call you at 10 o'clock at night and say, hey, did you get that email? I think it's rude to your kids, to your spouse, and to your family, right? So one way I do that, I think, is probably level setting on expectations and just respecting the fact that, when I go home, I'm home with my husband, and I want to make sure that I honor that time in that space. And I think that should be carried through to every single person who's on the As Follows team.
I think that's awesome. And reason being is because I can relate to you, Vanessa, by being the only in certain spaces. And so that definitely leads us to our next question of, what advice do you have for women who work in male dominated fields?
So number one is show up,
Yeah.
right? I'm not there because I'm pretty. I'm there because I'm smart.
Yep.
No one cares that I'm a female. No one cares that, what I look like. They might, but I don't want to hear it. Number two is speak up, right? So I believe that we have a seat at the table for a reason, and we're not there to be quiet. And so I do not sign up for administrative tasks and duties. I'm not going to be the admin on default. That's not how that works, right? Number three, from just a relationship perspective, acknowledge their wife and their spouse or their children. I have had encounters and I have great relationships with a lot of men because I'm in a male dominated field, of course. And one thing I always do is I always ask, how's your wife? How's your children? How's your family? One, it does a couple of things, right? It lets them know that I see them and that I acknowledge them and their family. But secondly, because I've had other experiences where men did not always honor their spouses in the workplace, it hopefully helps to disarm you and to let you know that that's not going to be acceptable in this type of professional relationship. And then number four, I would say keep it business. At the end of the day, because of the work that I do, clients bring us in to solve a problem, and we're here to support you. I'm not here for anything else. I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to be trusted. I'm here to be respected. And so the way that I do that is we keep it business and we stay within the scope that we're here for. And to me, that has just personally helped me to keep things above board, but to also to make sure that there's no misconceptions about the relationship.
Wow, I heard you loud and clear. Don't sign me up for no admin tasks. That's not the seat I sit at this table. So when I heard that, you apparently you are a strong woman, a strong Black woman, a strong visionary leader in the industry. As you think about being a strong woman, and what empowers you. Well, that's the question. What empowers you for that strength? And what is some advice that you could give to other women in the industry or across the industry as they are finding their voice and finding their place?
Ooh, so what empowers me? So the vision that my husband and I set for our marriage is we want to positively change the trajectory of our last name. And that's like huge. So we've had to kind of sit down and unpack, like, what does that mean? How do we measure that? How do we see that? And so a couple of things for us of what that means is we want to have conversations about finances and wealth management. My husband's in the financial services sector. We want to make sure that we have a trust for our kids. We want to make sure that that we are good stewards of our finances, that we invest our dollars into real estate, whether it's residential or commercial. We want to teach our kids, our family, our friends, our parents how to do that, right? So a part of what drives me is my ancestors. I am HBCU, pro-Black, I'm for the people all day long, but I'm also 100% about accountability and leadership. And what drives me is generational wealth. It's creating a legacy. It is, and to me, that doesn't just mean money, right? It's legacy mindset, because before it accumulates in the bank account, it has to be in here, in my head first, right? So that's a huge part of what drives me. And so I make 8 to 10 year visions and goals and decisions. I'm wired a little bit differently because I am highly, highly driven. So that's the first part about like what empowers me and kind of what kind of keeps me going. In terms of how to help other women in those spaces, I think it's just really about you being very clear on what works for you and what are your goals and what is your vision. I have friends that their number one goal in life is to be a great mom, period. And you own that, right? And so how they raise their children, how they engage with their children, how they do business, everything revolves around their children. And that's fine, right? I think that we have to start to define what works for me. One thing that I saw growing up is everybody would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I really wanted to be an attorney. But as I learned, I don't want to be one thing. I want to be a philanthropist. I want to be a business owner. I want to own real estate. I want to serve on the board of IOBSE. I want to go to conferences and help other HBCUs get students into these conferences so that we can start to make an impact in the security industry from a leadership perspective, right? So it's not just one thing I want to do. There's multiple things, and I want to be utilized to the best of my ability so that when I walk away, when I am not in a room, the Vanessa Matthews brand, the Vanessa Matthews legacy is greater, it's significant, and it wasn't just about me, right? So that's kind of what's fueling me.
That's awesome. And I think that's amazing, Vanessa, just because, me knowing you obviously from IOBSE, you have an extremely, extremely powerful story. And so I want to know, what are some of your personal experiences? And I think I may know, but what are some of your personal experiences that have motivated you to think and care about women empowerment?
Oh, there's so much. Well, first, let me just share that I had to empower myself, but I experienced a tornado with wind speeds exceeding 135 miles per hour that picked up my vehicle and totaled my car while I was inside of it. There were no sirens, there were no warnings, there was nothing. And that tornado that happened in Atlanta in 2008, one person lost their life, 50 people lost their homes, and it destroyed everything across the 285 perimeter and inside. And so I went down to the Atlanta Fulton County Emergency Management Agency office when that happened. And I told them, said, hey, I was in this tornado and I almost died. You need my help. And they were looking at me like, this lady is crazy. And I told them, I will work for free, but I want you to hire me so I can work within my field. I can gain the experience because I was motivated. And because I almost passed away literally and didn't even know, I had never even been in a tornado. Like there was hail the size of my fist pounding on my car. I had no clue what was happening. And so I think it's being on the other side, or even having to go through some of those challenges and some of those experiences that has allowed me to kind of take a step back and think about how can I use this experience, show up for other people, but also when I'm in those spaces. So in that particular scenario, I was not the only, but I was the youngest in that environment. And so as I'm here and as I'm in this space, how do I make sure that my work effort, that my communication, that my execution is where it needs to be, so that when the next person comes in behind me, right, that there's an opportunity and we've laid some groundwork for that next person to be successful in that environment. And what's interesting is one of my mentees at Savannah State, her name's Destiny Ruffin, that actually happened. And so when I left Atlanta Fulton County, Destiny came in and she's now running things. She helped to lead the whole Super Bowl when it came to Atlanta. But literally, it was those early experiences with me starting in one particular environment as an intern, and it opened the doors and led her to now grow in her career, and she's crushing it, right? And so I just think that like we have to think beyond ourselves, and sometimes it's hard, especially for me. I'm an only child, which means I'm naturally selfish. I was born selfish. So, but that has helped me.
Wow. When you think about building those different links, those different connections to be able to really continue the ecosystem of the trailblazing work that you do, and really thinking about, like, we look at this legacy of women's history, and it's about building and connecting and driving and sponsoring and mentoring. What are some ways that you think that other women just like yourself can help drive those links, can help drive that sponsorship, that membership, that coaching, and that networking for other women, even outside the security industry?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I think that the way we can do that as women is we need better support for women across difference. So if I look at the umbrella of women, right, there's different ethnicities, there's different religions, etc., cultural backgrounds. There's different dimensions of diversity within the women and the female landscape. And one of the things that I want to see that can be done differently is for different women who are at different levels, and specifically different cultural ethnicities. I think we need you to speak up more often in the rooms and the places that we're not in. So what do I mean by that? So there's a report by so Goldman Sachs made an announcement pre-COVID that they would only approve an IPO if it had a woman on their board. And so then it raises the question, right, of what women is Goldman Sachs referring to? And so between the years of 2016 and 2018, there were 230 open board seats in Fortune 500 companies. Out of those 230 board seats, 53% of those seats went to white women at 124, 14% went to Black women at 32, 7% went to Asian women at 17, and then 2% went to Hispanic women at 2 seats out of 230.
Wow.
And so what we find is women, as an umbrella blanket term, is a check the box, easy way for us to quote unquote support this aspect of diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging. But the reality is if you start asking more questions, we find that women doesn't mean all women, right? As a business owner, when I do business and a client tells me about their diversity spend, if you start asking more questions, so if 30% of your spend goes towards diversity, well, if I start asking, 20% is diverse. Well, then how do you break down that 20%? It's typically white women. And so what we need more of are, if you are a majority, if you're in the majority, how do you ask more questions? How do you drive more support for people who are not at the table? So for example, in Charlotte, I'm working with our local leadership. It's very hard to do business in the city of Charlotte. So when we're at the table with our city manager and our city leaders, I'm not just advocating for Vanessa and As Follows advisors. I'm advocating for all the other women who are not at the table, who've left Charlotte, who decided to do business elsewhere, because it has been such a burden for them to maintain their operations here. And so I don't just sit and advocate for myself and my company. I take the space and the tables that I'm at to ask different questions to see how can you bring someone else along? And then how do we help to educate you to know what support we do need as female entrepreneurs or as females in business. And so I think that's the number one thing that we need is we need majority women who are at different tables to speak up, to open doors, to support, to mentor. And there's a lot that do. And I think the way that we start that conversation is it has to begin with awareness.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And so when I think about, you're obviously a strong woman. So when I think about you being a strong woman, what fills your cup? What fulfills you?
So it's funny. I don't know if I think that I'm a strong woman, but I appreciate that because I'm a woman that cries. I'm a woman that has confidence issues. I'm a woman who oftentimes, for a long time in my life, I have not seen myself the way that other people see me. And so it's humbling that that's what is perceived, right? But that's not always how I feel. Mm-hmm. So what fills my cup is I have an amazing husband that speaks life into me when I don't believe it in myself. Again, my parents. I have a great network of people, and I have a personal board of directors. Some of those people are from IOBSE, but it really begins with being able to be honest and to be vulnerable and to not have to come in and pretend, right? Like I remember we had a super low time in our business. And I would go to networking events and everybody's like, business is great. It's awesome. We're crushing deals and blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting over there like, we ain't got nothing. Ain't nothing closing over here. And it came around to me to have to share an update on our business. And I told him, I was like, y'all, I think we're about to go out of business. Like we haven't sold any or closed any deals in over 6 months. And I just sat there, which means there was no income coming into my household. Which means how am I paying for gas? How am I paying for food? Like, let's just talk about that. And the more honest I was, the more the facade left the room. And the people who were talking about how many deals they were closing, we got more of the real. Well, yeah, it took you 3 years to close that deal. Yeah. It took this, it took that. Some, you had a big client that left. You had employees who left. And so what I try to do is I try not to just talk about all the great things, and to be real and to be honest about the challenges that we are experiencing, because what I found is that people don't really want to hear about the success and the diamond and the end. I want to know about the struggle and the how and the ability for you to overcome something more so than I want to hear about how you're over here crushing it, because 9 times out of 10, most people are going through the exact same things, or everybody's going through something in addition to what's happening at work. And I think the more that we can be honest about the reality, I think the more it sets us up to have more intentional, fruitful conversations. Because at the end of the day, we serve people.
Absolutely.
Vanessa, first off, I celebrate you. I celebrate Alex. I celebrate all the women that are trailblazers within your space. And just keeping it real. Like this was just a super organic conversation, but it shows your passion. It shows how authentic you are. It shows how strong of a trailblazer you are. It just shows how much of a phenomenal woman you are. So thank you for spending some time with us and really kind of letting us pull the curtains back a little bit and see what keeps you so strong. And I hope at the end of all of this that I had nuggets from this, but I hope others will take nuggets from this and be able to use this in their own space as they trailblaze for themselves each and every day. So thank you for letting us celebrate you doing Women's History Month. And tune in, guys. We have more impactful, exciting, and powerful conversations just like this to come over the next couple of weeks. So tune in, keep us connected. Once again, if you haven't done it already, subscribe to that IOBSE communications channel. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, and also on our very own website, iobse.org. So hit that subscribe button and we'll see you out there soon. Thanks, Vanessa. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.